It's the Misfits.
Hey everybody, it's the finale of Season 2, but thanks to technology, it's kind of not, but kind of is the finale for Season 2. So you were probably expecting to hear our interview with Joshua Knoll of the Whole Church podcast today, talking about church unity and the conference they have coming up in May and their podcast and all that good stuff. Unfortunately, due to technology, we were unable to actually get that recorded. And so today, to end Season 2, we are going to give you a sneak peek into the Bible study series that we are going to be starting here in March for our Patreon supporters on the book of Galatians. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, if you go to patreon.com/Mr. Misfits and sign up in any of the 4 or 5 different price points that we've got for it, you will gain access to the exclusive Bible study that we are putting on here in the month of March that is going to walk through the book of Galatians, as well as gain access to all future Bible studies that we're going to do throughout the year and years to come. So again, patreon.com/Mr. Misfits, you can sign up there. We're going to explain everything as far as what to expect and how this is all going to go, and even walk through the background of the book of Galatians here in this video, in this episode today. Everything after today, though, will be exclusive to Patreon. So again, patreon.com/Mr. Misfits. Also, we wanted to make you aware of some other things that are going on here in the month of March during our break. So, March Madness is coming up. If you are somebody that enjoys doing the bracket challenges, we are going to have a bracket challenge ourselves. It's a $10 entry fee. It's a 50-50 style winnings. Plus, we're also going to throw in a little bit of Misfits merch on top of it. So if you're interested in that, just stay tuned to our social media channels or our website, MrMisfits.com, to stay up to date on all of that. We also have a few new swag items that we're going to be putting out this March to prepare for Season 3. And this Bible study that we are going to preview for you now. So again, if you want to join Patreon, if you are wanting to stay updated on everything else, MrMisfits.com. Hey everybody, welcome to the first Misfits Bible study.
That's right, this is something exclusive for Patreon members. However, this first introduction here is for everybody.
Yes. So if you like what you hear, hop on over to patreon.com/Mystery Misfits. Any of the levels will get you access to the actual study itself. But we wanted to take a little bit of time and explain, 1, the process, 2, what we're doing, and 3, give a little bit of an introduction to what we're going to be talking about over the next 6 to 7 weeks, depending on how many things we squish together.
Yeah, so why don't you explain to everybody, this is going to be a different Bible study than what most might be traditionally used to. So what's it going to look like?
Yeah, so what we have is that what Patreon allows us to do is we are able to upload things like study sheets and videos exclusively to Patreon. Patreon members will be able to then access all of this stuff, be able to watch. There's also comment sections and things like that. So once a week, we'll be posting a video and the study sheet with it. The study sheet will have some pre-questions, some follow-up questions from the week before, and then some things that you can fill out during the video, and then some questions afterwards. The questions afterwards, specifically, are what we want to be able to have discussion about in the comment section underneath. So be checking back throughout the week to see, where the discussion is going with all of that. But what the videos will do is they're going to walk us through the main points of the passage. They're going to help us understand some of the more cultural pieces that are going on here. And they're going to provide a little bit of insight into why we're asking the questions that we are actually asking during this whole process.
Mm-hmm.
And then once this series is all said and done and over, you will be able to access it through your Patreon account until we decide to take it down, which we
Probably won't.
There's no reason to take it down.
No.
If you do this study and like, hey, this is great, I want to use it for our church or youth group or small group, contact us. We can figure out the licensing and everything for that later on. But for now, it's going to be on Patreon. You can access it, watch it, do the discussions, interact with other Patreon members, and hopefully this will be beneficial for everybody. People enjoy it, which means we'll do this with some other books and things like that throughout the year.
Yeah.
Now, this month specifically, we are going to talk about the book of Galatians.
Yeah, and by month, we're breaking it down into 6 separate weeks.
Right. Because, again, this is still the Misfits, so our math is not going to be correct.
Yes.
It's a month for us because we're doing this, for those that don't know, we just finished Season 2. Season 3 is coming up here at the beginning of April. And so this is just kind of a break period for us in the month of March to get some things tweaked on the website and things like that. But also for us to be able to have some more just conversation-led things around just specific passages of Scripture. And so that's what we're going to do with all of you. So this month, or this session, or this series, or this whatever it is, depending on when you're actually listening and watching to all of this, we are doing the book of Galatians. And we're doing Galatians because of the fact that there has been, over the past couple of months, a lot of controversies that have arisen online, through just church trends in general that we hear about, through even some things that we've heard of from personal conversations or that we've heard other people have had conversations about, that would be solved pretty easily if people had just actually read the book of Galatians as a whole. And so we're like, hey, if this is really where all of this stuff lies, why don't we just go ahead and talk about the book of Galatians? So that is why we have decided to start with the book of Galatians. But Galatians also provides us with an easy, simple blueprint on what Christocentric living actually looks like.
I like how you say simple, because you just said how complicated we all make it, and then there's a simple
But there's a simple way of making things Christocentric on paper. Not necessarily simple when we actually go to apply it in our own lives, but the process itself is simple. And everything we do here within Misfits, we always are trying to keep things Christocentric.
Yes.
And so that's part of the other reason why we wanted to start here in Galatians. So the way that this will work most weeks is that we will read the passage that we're dealing with, and then we'll walk through the main points. We'll explain some of the things that are more cultural. We'll explain some of the things that just don't make sense out of context. You know, some of the things we'll have to dive into the Greek a little bit and dissect, so that way we actually have an understanding before we actually get into discussion. Today, though, we're going to start out by just walking through some background pieces to help us understand what this is that we're actually looking at. So, Brandon, the first thing is that Galatians obviously is a letter.
Yes.
Written by who?
Written by Paul.
To
the churches in Galatia.
Galatia, not Galatian. Galatia.
Correct.
And it's around 50 AD. There's arguments whether it's 45, whether it's 55, whether it's 48, whether it's 49, whether it's 50.
But you know, with us, math.
We're just going to stick with around 50 because that's about the middle ground area that everybody kind of agrees on. But the bigger thing that most people are unaware of is what it is when we talk about Galatia, because we don't have a Galatia anymore. So Galatia itself, and we had a map, but we realized that it's not working on this. So I might have fixed it and it's uploaded now. If there's a map, great. If not, Galatia is in modern day Turkey, but it is not one city. And that's the first thing that some people are not necessarily aware about, is that the book of Ephesians was written to a specific church in a city of Ephesus. The book of Romans was written to a group of Christians in one city, even though it was a massive city, in Rome. But the book of Galatians is written to multiple churches in the region of Galatia. And so we know of at least 3 cities. There's Iconium, there's Lystra, and there's Derbe. And they're just kind of spotted around in a little bit throughout this region in what we would now call Turkey.
What would you say would be the distance between them, Mike?
That's more math. Do we really want to go that
I was just
route?
curious if it's like walking distance, like what their community would have been like.
Everything is within somewhat of walking distance because, I mean, they're having to go city to city. And that's part of what we're looking at is these churches were planted by Paul and Barnabas during the first missionary journey in Acts 13 and 14. So we know that it was part of the route. Whether or not these churches had tight-knit communities together, I have no idea. My guess is that there's at least some communication because the letters go from church to church to church.
Yeah.
But there are these different kind of communities going on. And this is also one of the areas within Asia Minor that was heavily part of the dispersion after everything was going on with Roman occupation. So there were a lot of pockets of Jewish communities throughout Asia Minor, especially within this Galatian region. And so Paul and Barnabas set up shop in at least in 3 cities there in Galatia during Acts 13, Acts 14. And then he goes back to them in Acts 16 and Acts 17. And there are some fun, interesting things that happen during this. This is during the time where they end up going back there partly because they want to go all the way into Asia and the Holy Spirit prevents them. And so they just end up turning around. There's a couple of places where they almost get killed. There's a couple places to get arrested. But this is also where Paul meets Timothy and picks Timothy up. He forces him to get circumcised as a teenager. Poor man. And during that process is where the discipleship of Timothy starts. Is they're coming out of Galatia and finishing off the journey. And it's important to understand that Timothy comes from this region to understand Timothy, but also to help us understand some of the struggles that we will see as we go through this book.
Yeah.
Because it deals with a lot of the struggle between Jewish and Gentile believers. And so we also need to clarify that. That is not necessarily where we are going to focus. Because unfortunately, and this is something just as a clarification for everybody, unfortunately, this book also, one of the things we have seen it used for is a rise in anti-Semitism within Christianity. And that is the opposite of what this book actually preaches. And so that's also part of why we're walking through all these sort of things. Because it deals a lot with the struggle around circumcision, around the Old Testament in general, the law specifically, but the Old Testament in general,
the old law
our
of,
idea.
Yes.
Yeah. And the idea of the role of the Spirit, and then the Judaizers and Peter, because of course Peter gets involved.
Yeah. Which we've talked about on a handful of different episodes.
We've talked about this within the tribalized theology. We've talked about it in Agree to Disagree. We talked about it, I think, even going back with Romans 12. We talked about it with the Essential Church. All of these different things, we've talked about it.
Yeah, so this will bring it full circle.
But yeah, we're going to come full circle, and we're going to see how the book of Galatians can help us with the way that we interact with the world around us, the way that we deal with some of these miscommunications and misunderstandings and just straight up false teachings that we see come out of a misunderstanding of this book. And ideally, the goal is that we see how Paul is directing us to Christocentric theology and living. So those of you that are already on Patreon watching this,
good news.
Good news. We're about to dive right in. Those of you that are watching this on YouTube or Facebook and you're like, hey, you're getting to the good part, let me watch. Patreon.com/Mr. Misfits. Again, even at the $3 level, gets you access to all this stuff. And you'll be able to interact, communicate, and hopefully have some fun.
Yeah, hopefully, obviously, learn.
Yes, learn, grow, disciple each other, fellowship with each other in a way that we can do it in this digital world.